Immigration detention was not meant to be punitive. But on any given day, more than 400 immigrants are locked inside solitary confinement, one of the harshest forms of incarceration. Arizona's Pinal County Jail is one of more than 200 facilities contracted by the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, otherwise known as ICE. As Congress weighs immigration reform, we went inside one of the more punitive corners of the modern-day immigration system. This is a rare view inside the solitary confinement cells where jail officials isolate both criminal inmates and immigrant detainees. They spend up to 23 hours a day alone in a cell that is 9 by 13 feet. Esteban Tiznado, an immigrant detainee from Mexico, spent nearly 3 months inside Pinal's solitary confinement.
Well, I was kind of stressing real bad, depressed, because there's nothing to do right there, just 24 hours locked down.
Most of the immigrant detainees who end up in solitary are like Tiznado. They have a criminal history and were locked inside solitary for disciplinary purposes.
They said, "Oh, we got you you're gonna get a write-up for threatening." I go, "I wasn't threatening nobody."
I said he represented a threat to jail staff and sent him to solitary. Tiznado said the isolation made him lose hope.
So one time, I was just feeling like I just want to suicide because all the depressed, all the stress hit you real bad.
What did you do?
Well, I just start thinking about my mom, and that's why I didn't did it.
Tiznado was allowed outside for 1 hour of recreation each day. This is where they take them. Officials call them enclosures, detainees call them dog runs. Medical researchers say prolonged isolation in places like this can permanently disable human brains, making individuals more prone to suicide, delirium, and panic attacks. ICE says that the solitary confinement practice helps protect both detainees and staff, and that the option is used as a last resort. But critics say the penalty is too steep and subject to abuse.
In those cases where people are detained, we have seen increasingly a higher number of individuals who are placed in solitary confinement. And that's a result of this massive enforcement and detention system that has been created over the past 10 years, in which immigrants are being arrested and detained in facilities that are not equipped to hold individuals in administrative custody.
Mary Meg McCarthy is the executive director of the National Immigrant Justice Center, a Chicago-based nonprofit that provides legal services for immigrants.
The decision as to who's being placed in solitary confinement really resides with the correctional facility that's holding the individual. And each correctional facility has its own rules and regulations and own decision makers. So it could be the sheriff, it could be some of the correctional officers themselves.
McCarthy says that though ICE has solitary standards, it is unable to enforce them because the detention system has grown too large to properly oversee.
It's just arbitrary in many circumstances and ripe for abuse. And that's what's really concerning, is that when you have 250 facilities, each having their own rules and regulations and own decision makers, there's no standard. There's no accountability in the system for how individuals are treated.
In a recent survey, ICE found it isolates just about 1% of its daily immigrant population, which is significantly lower than the 7% at the Bureau of Prisons. But the practice is still surprising because, unlike criminal detainees, Immigrant individuals are not supposed to be punished. They are held on civil, not criminal charges. Critics acknowledge some immigrants may need to be segregated for safety purposes, but their main complaint is that so many have been sent to solitary unnecessarily. Rashad bin Rashad is a refugee from Yemen who came over as a teenager in 1999.
The U.S. is like the symbol of freedom, the symbol of opportunity, the symbol of doing something, to really do something on your own.
While bin Rashad's parents gained asylum in England, he sought protection in the United States. But he took bad advice and applied as a Somali after friends told him that if he didn't, he would likely be deported. The false application caught up with him, and he was sent to Dodge County Detention Center in Wisconsin in 2005, where he appealed for asylum as a Yemeni and was sent into solitary.
I've seen people snap, I've seen people go crazy. After a while, I think it's almost normal to hear people just talk to themselves.
Records show his offense was not wanting to leave the cell to eat with others.
I was practicing Ramadan, which is, we fast 30 days from sunrise to sunset.
A guard told him he was breaking the rules.
And she said, well, you can either stay where you at. You either have to come out and eat, or you're going to go to segregation. I said, if these are the two choices that I have, then I'm going to go to segregation. I'm okay, I'll go to segregation.
The sheriff who ran the Dodge County Detention Center at the time said he wouldn't have been punished for practicing Ramadan, but he could have been for breaking the rules. After 3 years in jail, bin Rashad won his case and is now living in Chicago.
Well, the issue is that it can, under certain circumstances, constitute cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment, and even under worse circumstances, it can constitute torture.
Juan Mendez, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Torture and a visiting law professor at American University, began looking into the practice of solitary and U.S. immigration detention centers last year. He says prolonged detention of more than 2 weeks leaves detainees at greater risk of mental health effects. About half of the detainees stay in solitary for more than 2 weeks.
In my mind, the United States is in breach of its obligations under the Torture Convention, of which it is a signatory, when it applies solitary confinement, and when it applies it to immigration detainees, and particularly if it applies them on the basis of discrimination because of the status as LGBTI.
Supposed to be they say they put me in segregation because for protect me, because I am gay and the people straight is in the other cells.
Delfino Quiroz is an immigrant from Mexico who was held in solitary in Houston, Texas for nearly 4 months in 2010. He says he heard 3 people try to commit suicide while he was in solitary.
I feel really bad because I understand the people like that. It's long time to stay in one cell. Almost 24 hours, only thinking and thinking and thinking, that's it.
He requested Bibles, books, something to keep his mind engaged. And all that material was denied. And it was just, there's just no reason to treat a human being like that.
Quiroz's lawyers at the National Immigrant Justice Center were able to get him out on bail. He is now waiting for a legal decision on his case.